Welcome. I'm Glenn Anderson with the Olympia Fellowship of Reconciliation. This TV series explores a variety of issues that relate to peace, social justice, and nonviolent social change. President Eisenhower said that the people want peace so much that one of these days the government will have to get out of the people's way and let them have peace. This month's TV program is about exactly that. People are making peace through citizen diplomacy efforts and through people-to-people exchanges and through other efforts for solidarity across nations. We have 4 guests who have worked with organizations that are doing people-to-people exchanges, citizen diplomacy, and solidarity. They're connecting face-to-face across international borders. I'm happy to welcome our 4 guests. We have Joann Mitchell Young. Joann works as a professional counselor, and she serves as an active volunteer, extending her people skills worldwide through the Friendship Force of Olympia. And this is part of a worldwide organization that promotes people-to-people exchanges and cultural understanding. Good to have you here, Joann.
Thank you.
We have John Harvey. John has worked extensively and compassionately for peace in the Middle East, especially through the Olympia Rafah Sister City Project. In early 2008, John traveled to Rafah and other cities in Palestine to promote mutual activities with the Olympia area and also to help other international programs working in that area. It's good to have you here, John.
Good to be here.
And we have Anna Shelton. Anna works professionally in a job that relates to resolving disputes, and she has a long background of significant volunteer work for solidarity and support for people in Santo Tomas, which is a rural area in Nicaragua. Anna is active with the Thurston Santo Tomas Sister County Association, and that group has maintained a very significant relationship with that area for nearly 20 years. Good to have you here, Anna.
Thanks, Glenn.
And we have Char Simons, who is an adjunct faculty member of Middle East Studies and Journalism at the Evergreen State College in Olympia. Char's work includes leading classes of students and other people to visit Arab and Turkish Middle East areas, and Char is also a member of the Fellowship of Reconciliation and participated in a grassroots civilian diplomacy delegation to Iran that was sponsored by the national level of the Fellowship of Reconciliation. Char, it's good to have you here.
Thank you, Glenn. Good to be here.
So we've got a big agenda and a whole world to cover. I'm glad you're all here. Let's get just a little brief introduction to each of the 4 groups, and then we'll talk about the value of people-to-people exchanges. Joann, what is the Friendship Force?
Well, Friendship Force is an international cultural exchange program which which tries to promote peace and understanding, goodwill, and friendship on a one-to-one, people-to-people basis. And that's done through exchanges. There are a number of exchanges, kinds of exchanges, between clubs in the 60 countries around the world where Friendship Force currently has members.
Okay. And you mentioned to me when we were preparing for the program that the distinction with Friendship Force is that it's really people, it's faces, not places. So
Right.
It's not the usual tourist thing, but it's really getting to know people. It's
Friendship Force has 3 mottos, and they're under development a little bit, creating some new emphasis. The original themes were faces, not places, and a world of friends is a world of peace. And now we're adding changing the way you see the world, because it's about connection, understanding, and living together to know each other better.
Great. And we'll explore a lot more in depth as the hour proceeds. John, what's the Olympia Rafa Sister City Project, and what does it do? First, where is Rafa? We can show a map that'll help people find it. If the map focuses in pretty close on the southeastern corner of the Mediterranean, and you can go ahead and tell us.
That's right, Glenn. The Mediterranean is here. Israel is here. We're at the top of Africa here with Egypt and Jordan on the side. And within the boundaries of Israel, but not Israel proper, is the West Bank.
And that's shown with the red outline against the right edge, the eastern edge of Israel.
And the other part of Palestine, or the occupied territories, is Gaza, which is a tiny strip of land here. And when we talk about Olympia Rafa Sister City Project, we mean Rafa City, which is at the very border of Egypt and Gaza, right there.
Okay, thanks. So tell us about what is the Olympia Rafa Sister City Project? What does it do, briefly?
Like many Sister City projects, it seeks to develop friendship between the people here in Olympia and the people of Rafa, Gaza, and Palestine. It was established in 2003 by friends and family and admirers of Rachel Corrie, who was killed in Rafa in 2003 at that time.
Okay. And that was part of her vision, was to be able to come back home and get a Sister City project.
Absolutely. She learned a great deal about what was happening over there, and came to feel very passionately about making a difference. And so at Evergreen, actually, studying in the Middle East studies, introduced her to that world. And so she wanted to go make a difference, learn about what was happening there. And even before she left, she wanted to do a Sister City project. It was one of her goals when she came back.
Okay, thanks. And we'll be exploring that in more depth as the hour proceeds. Anna, you've been working a long time with folks in Santo Tomas, Nicaragua. Tell us about the organization that supports this.
Sure. Our organization is called the Thurston Santo Tomas Sister County Association. And for the past 20 years, we've been working in tandem with a nonprofit organization in Santo Tomas called the Committee for Community Development. And we seek to promote peace and social justice by educating the Thurston County and surrounding community about life in Nicaragua and current events in Nicaragua, and also by facilitating exchanges between people living here in the Olympia area, traveling to Santo Tomas, and people from Santo Tomas coming to Thurston County. So we've had about 130 people from this area who have visited Santo Tomas, and about 25 people from Santo Tomas who have had the opportunity to come to Olympia.
Mm-hmm. And I know it's a really rich, vibrant back and forth thing, and the community is all jazzed up about it. I mean, our community, and from what I know of Santo Tomas, they're jazzed up about the relationship.
Yes, it's very exciting.
So, and we'll be looking at that more in the hour. Char, you participated in a peace delegation in 2006 that went to Iran, that was organized by the National Fellowship of Reconciliation's Iran program. Can you tell us something about that, just so the viewers can get a handle on that program and that intent?
Sure. There were 21 of us, I believe, 20 of whom were Americans. We ranged in age from roughly 20 to 80. There were several clergy along, several educators, a retired banker, a publisher, and we were there to meet Iranians, both formally and informally.
Mm-hmm. And you did a lot of things. We actually did a program after you returned, and we had some photos of some great things to help people connect on a people. And I know that folks who come back from these delegations do speaking engagements and public presentations of various kinds.
Yeah, that's part of the expectation, is that what we as delegates learn from our experience in Iran, that we will come back and share with the community.
Yeah, and you also teach at the Evergreen State College, and you lead field programs that go to the Arab and Turkish Middle East. Tell us a little bit about that.
Those programs happen about once a year, and along with my other Middle East Studies colleagues at Evergreen, Steve Niva and Therese Saliba, we take turns pretty much leading these programs, and they are predominantly for students, but some of them are also open to community members. And what we do on those programs is a combination of meeting and working with local NGOs, and meeting with journalists.
NGOs is non-governmental organizations.
Yes.
Yeah.
We also meet with journalists, writers, artists, environmentalists, etc., do some cultural and historical touring. So that's the gist of the programs. And then the expectation again is that participants will come back and do some kind of public presentation for the community.
Right. So all of you work in different parts of the world. You work in any part of the world, and you all focus on specific areas. Why is it important to do this? And maybe that's obvious, but it's helpful to hear from your own heads and your own hearts why it's important to do this kind of work.
Well, I think in our case, it's important to see people to be with people and to see them as they live and participate in their daily life, and to give them that opportunity. We all have such misconceptions about other places in the world as the world does about our country. And if anything, I think this kind of an exchange and the things that these folks are talking about probably does the best propaganda for displacing and contradicting some of the false impressions people have of us, the people of America, and people in other countries when we're there, one-on-one.
One of the strong messages that we heard in Iran was that people were very dissatisfied with their government and very dissatisfied with our government, and really wanting more people-to-people exchanges in the fields of education, sports, music, culture, business. So that's what this work helps to foster.
When we were preparing for the TV program, you mentioned to me on the phone that this is one of the things that really keeps you connected in Olympia, staying here.
It really does. My work with this Sister City project has been an incredible opportunity to be involved with really intergenerational seeking for social change, working with lots of different kinds of people here in the Thurston County area and also in Santo Tomas. And I just think there's something really special about building one-on-one friendships that can just change the way a person views their life and really impact goals that each person has for peace in the world.
Glenn, we talked about what it brings for us. We learn more about what's going on over there. There's a great deal of misinformation by governments in general, but by our own government regarding sort of the enemy of the moment, and so we get a bad impression of people, and that we don't want our governments to get away with that. We want to make sure that we remember that people are people wherever we go, and they're wonderful, and we do want to meet them, but also we want them to know about us, and to know that Americans, in this case, are people worth knowing and are not all, just like they see in the movies, hyper-aggressive or ignorant and so forth. So.
I appreciate when you said a moment ago about breaking down barriers, because so often that needs doing, and the national level of the Fellowship of Reconciliation has been doing that for decades. In the early 80s, we had a USSR reconciliation program that sent delegations back and forth. You know, they'd have people from the United States connect up with citizens of the Soviet Union and take a big boat ride down the Volga River, and then they'd come over here and take a big boat ride down the Mississippi River, you know, and people could share, you know, the common experiences and the culture and the music and the whatever goes with it, the food and everything, and it was a bonding thing. And there were other things that we did that were breaking down these barriers, because we were supposed to treat the people of the Soviet Union as if they were enemies, because after all, we were willing to bomb each other into smithereens. And you're going into an area where the United States government doesn't really get along with Palestinians, and you work in an area where in the 80s, the United States government under Reagan was actively funding terrorists, the Contras, who were trying to overthrow the Nicaraguan government, or at least destabilize the population and destroy the infrastructure. And you went to Iran, which is the enemy du jour, you know, it's today's enemy. I mean, you know, this is all part of peace building, and even without an explicit foreign policy conversation.
And learning that we really are more alike than we are different is my experience.
Yeah, and it takes us back to that Eisenhower quotation about people want peace so much that one of these days the governments will have to get out of their way, get out of people's way and let the people have peace. So anyway, I just want to express appreciation for all that you're doing. What have you discovered? What else have you discovered when you've been in other countries? Are there other insights that you've gained or experiences that need to be shared?
Well, I think this has been spoken to by a couple of people already, but I was really amazed when I was in Nicaragua in the year 2000, and Nicaragua was watching the elections happening here in this country, and I was really amazed by the capacity of people to see past the actions, the foreign policy decisions, the economic decisions that the U.S. government is making that impacts their daily life, and to really open their hearts and connect and believe in a greater sense of who the American people are and the similarities that we have. That was something that was really powerful to me and motivated me to return to the United States and work harder here to continue and to deserve those expectations.
We were in Germany early in the second current administration, and I had to state my personal beliefs about where I stood and that it was okay to talk about these things. And the response we got on several occasions was, we know people in government or people and politicians that people aren't necessarily the same. We know that you, like we, are interested in day-to-day things and our families and peace. It was rather remarkable at a very intense time in this country. This was in Germany.
Sorry. I've noticed a hardening of stereotypes on both sides. One of the early groups of students I took to the Arab Middle East was during the first Bush administration, and when people would ask us our political beliefs and philosophies, it was more credible to say, you know, Bush wasn't elected. But I noticed a hardening in people after Bush's re-election, where that reasoning, Bush wasn't really elected, wasn't as readily accepted. And I've also noticed this among students and community people here, that immediately after 9/11, 2001, there seemed to be a window where people were interested, they were curious, there was acknowledgement that they didn't know about this part of the world, they didn't understand it. And that window of openness quickly closed and became filled with stereotypes where people thought they knew, even though they didn't. And I see this on both the Americans and on the Arab side and Turkish side as well. So I think that the work we're doing is becoming even more critical as the war propaganda machine continues.
When people from other countries have come here and connected, they've developed some powerful experiences and gained some things. You told me on the phone 2 stories from a recent delegation, the spring 2008 delegation from Santo Tomas. Would you tell us either one or both of those stories?
Sure. So this was the 9th delegation from Santo Tomas that Olympia has welcomed, and it occurred in April and May of 2008. And there were 4 people who traveled to Olympia at that time. And I had the great fortune to spend time with all of them as they connected with different organizations here. And particularly one full day we spent in Shelton. I accompanied one of our delegates, a young man by the name of Bernice, who is part of a very exciting regional and national effort in Nicaragua to improve literacy rates. And we visited Mason County Literacy in Shelton, which is a wonderful organization doing a lot of work. And Bernice had an opportunity to speak with a combined class of about 40 students in the English as a Second Language program and talk about the community development and literacy promotion work that he was doing in Nicaragua, and to hear some from the students about what they were learning and their experiences here as immigrants. And Bernice was so moved that after speaking about the community development work that he was doing, several students, not just one, really spoke up and said, what can we do to support what you're doing in Santo Tomas, Nicaragua? So many of us have traveled here because we're being pushed out by lack of economic opportunities, and we want to support the kind of work that you're doing on the ground in Santo Tomas so more people in that community can stay. And Bernice was really moved by that, and so was I. And he gained so much from that experience of getting to talk with students who are here and learn more about what the immigration experience is like for at least some folks who have made it to this area. Another related story from that delegation was an opportunity to visit with Casa Latina in Seattle, which is a day laborer center. And the entire delegation from Nicaragua was really, really amazed at the in-person stories that they heard from day laborers at that center about their crossings into the United States and their daily experiences living here. And it really surprised many of the delegates from Nicaragua to hear about the racism and poverty and injustice that people face after making it to the United States. It was different than what they had experienced in their community, hearing from people who had traveled here and returned to Santo Tomas. So it was very rich for everyone involved, and it's such a beautiful part of these people-to-people exchanges is just these little stories that really ripple out and have impact on people's lives.
Are there other stories? I knew about those because you had mentioned those on the phone when we were preparing for the program. Are there other stories of experiences of people who have come here on exchange programs? Some of you haven't had as many people coming here. The Santo Tomas group works both ways, but you've got.
Well, last summer we hosted 25 members of the Cairo, Egypt Friendship Force. Among them were 4 teenagers and a preteen. And my husband and I were fortunate to host the preteen and his grandmother. He was 12, and we invited our 13-year-old grandson to come and join us that week. And seeing those 2 boys bond, fortunately for us, Omar spoke excellent English as well as Arabic, because it would have been different without that gift. But just watching how immediately these 2 boys from different cultures, different faiths, different ways of life, because Omar came from a very wealthy family, was very exciting. They're still in contact. They read Harry Potter together. I took them to Wild Waves. We taught Omar to make pancakes. He had never been in the kitchen, and Mitchell's quite a cook. And it was just, this hope for me was seeing the future, as I hope it will be with that part of the world and our country.
Their bonding reminds me of a number of years ago during the Cold War. The National Fellowship of Reconciliation brought a delegation of teenagers from the Soviet Union, and then they stayed like a week in Olympia and a week in Vancouver, Washington, and a week someplace else. And when they were here, we actually had them on the TV program. They stayed with host families. And this was done with the, I'm spacing out on the name now, the name of some people who had worked with a peace-oriented production of USSR dramatic stage production. I space out the name, it'll come to me later. But anyway, they stayed with those folks and other people who were supportive. And Carol Burns, who is one of the founders of TCTV and helps with our program, and her daughter Lucia had helped get them on. So we had these like about 25 teenagers as guests on our show, and they were in filling the studio, and somebody had arranged to get all of them identical sweatshirts. So here's these kids, and we were doing the program live, and somebody phoned in and said, which of those kids are the Russians and which of those kids are the Americans? You couldn't tell because they were interacting in such egalitarian ways across that it was hard to sort out who was who. So the story of the two young people reminded me of that people are across borders.
I have a great picture of the two of them in McDonald's enjoying the same food and chatting.
Yeah.
The Middle East experiences have had some really powerful impacts on some of the Evergreen students, and one of them, who was on an early program, is studying international law at the American University of Cairo, and is currently doing an internship now at the Carter Center in Georgia. Another one is studying to become a rabbi in Israel and regularly takes friends and colleagues there over into Arab countries, which they might not feel as comfortable doing without him. So.
Let's look at the origins of each of the groups that you work with. Joann, tell us something about the background of the Friendship Force. How did it come into being, and how has it evolved and grown?
I always get this date wrong, but I believe it's 77. Is that right? Friendship Force, there was a man named Neil Smith who had lived in Brazil, and he had a lot of person-to-person experiences that were very heartwarming and very wonderful for him. And he wanted to create an organization that could provide that for other people. So when he returned to Atlanta, Georgia, he started the first Friendship Force Club. And the very first one from Washington was set up and organized by then Governor Dixie Lee Ray and her sister, and 200 people went to Seoul, Korea for 2 weeks on an airplane, and they didn't know where they were going. It was a mystery tour. The club in Olympia began in 1984. A woman by the name of Jerry Bailey, who is one of our most active members at 91, almost 92, invited a group of friends into her living room and started the Olympia Club.
And you've grown since then to the point that you meet monthly?
Yes, we meet quarterly for international programs. On September 21st, we're going to have a woman who worked with the Greenbelt organization, the Nobel Prize winning group that planted trees in Kenya.
Oh, yeah.
And she was one of the people who was part of that, and she will be speaking about that experience. And so these are quarterly meetings, our international programs, and then monthly we meet for social activities. And we're also in the community. We have tables at Super Saturday, and we host a table and do some assistance at the MS Walk. And we have tables at the Ethnic Center, the Ethnic Fair, and the Diversity Fair, which is coming up in August. And we contribute and collect donations for the food bank. So try to be in the community in as many ways as we can, as well as enjoy the community when our guests come.
Yeah, good, thanks. And we'll come back and look at recent and future activities. John, we talked a little bit about how the Olympia Rafa Sister City project began. Can you tell us anything else about the origins and how it's been evolving?
Well, as I said, it was something Rachel really wanted to do, and so after she was killed, it was an idea that just stayed alive, and the family, friends, and admirers wanted to make it happen. So in 2003, as many people as possible gathered. It started to take shape. Eventually, we, as the years went by, we became 501c3 nonprofit organization, and it's a very collaborative, very creative process, trying to figure out the best way to be a sister city project for an area of the world that is, well, first of all, not even a country, but also is heavily ostracized and almost impossible to get into. So it was, we had to think creatively and try to get our delegates in with some success, and work with the people there to create projects that they wanted to work on and would be meaningful for them. And then also here in Olympia, doing informative presentations and community events to raise money for funds and such forth.
You've got a website. I should have mentioned your website too. Yours is thefriendshipforce.org.
Mm-hmm. Must have the.
Thefriendshipforce.org was for yours. Right. And yours is www.orscp. You have to get the initials. Olympia Rafa Sister City Project, orscp.org. And it's a good-looking website.
We had our maestro Andrew Lyons work on it, and all volunteer, but he does a nice job.
And there's content there that'll get people connected. Mm-hmm. You also do some work with the Rachel Corrie Foundation for Peace and Justice, which is also active in the community.
It is, and there's a lot of crossover with membership and activities. One group puts on an event and the other group helps and so forth. Mm-hmm. But they are different. Rachel Corrie Foundation, Rachel was really an Olympia true original. She had a big life and a big vision, and she wanted to do so many things in the realm of justice and helping the world. And the Rachel Corrie Foundation is more about that larger vision, and not just Palestine particularly, or about Rafah. Yeah. ORCP is about Rafah and that community exchange. So.
Let's see. You had tried to get the Olympia City Council to approve a sister city relationship, and they said no.
Quite.
Can you tell us something about that?
Well, it's hard to wrap up. I think we did the best we could to present this as the correct and right thing to do. We followed all the steps and procedures, but city councils are interesting animals, and we had some support there, some detractors, some ambivalence, and there was pressure from the community against it. We felt there was more for it, and this time the city decided not to do it. Very ironically, about a month later, City of Portland declared their intention to become a sister city with Iran, Shiraz. And the great Satan and developing nuclear weapons and all these things. And so it just depends on who your community is made up of. I think there was more support there for that.
Let's see. Your group also, with Saint Thomas, exists unofficially, but
That's right.
pervasively throughout our community.
Oh, good.
And persistently for nearly 20 years. But yours is an unofficial relationship.
Yes, we've focused on keeping it people to people rather than government to government. It's been a conscious choice.
So tell us something about how it started, because I remember when Gene Eberhard had been in the Seattle to Nicaragua Construction Brigade, and that was the second program that we produced for the Olympia FOR back in, that was our March 1987 program. And she was just fresh back from the Seattle to Nicaragua Construction Brigade, then started the Olympia to Nicaragua Construction Brigade, and then the Santo Tomas group came later. What else can you tell us about the origins and the early life of that?
Sure. So in the 1980s, there was really a national movement in the United States to draw attention to what was happening in Nicaragua by creating sister city relationships. And there was a massive social revolution and social change happening in Nicaragua in the 1980s. Huge strides were being made in the areas of healthcare and women's rights and literacy and education. And at the same time, the United States government was financing and orchestrating a war to dismantle that revolution. And so these sister city relationships and the construction brigades that you mentioned were started as a way to draw attention to what was happening and to illustrate to people in Nicaragua to really reach out and say, we are not in line with the decisions that are creating this war in your country. And so the Seattle Construction Brigade focused on building a school in a very rural area outside of the town of Santo Tomas. And the participants in the construction brigade lived with local families and developed very close relationships with those families while they were participating in building a school. And just about a month after that delegation of people from the Seattle area returned to the United States, there was a vicious attack on those same families that people had been living with, and that attack happened as a result of the Contra, who the United States was funding and arming. And that was so devastating to folks who had returned here, who had begun to look at these friends and extensions of their family in that area. And those families moved into the town of Santo Tomas as a result of what was happening in that area. And so the relationships moved with those people to the town of Santo Tomas. And at the same time, the Committee for Community Development was doing wonderful social projects work in Santo Tomas and continues doing those projects today. And the relationship was formed between that existing organization already doing great work to say, how can we in this area continue to cultivate these relationships and also support the fabulous projects that are happening on the ground in Santo Tomas and continue to raise awareness in the United States about the impact of decisions that happen here in people's lives.
So it's really well rooted,
Yes.
and people are just staying real close to the community and close to the roots and those ongoing relationships that have gone on now for 20 years.
Yeah, one thing that a delegate mentioned during this past delegation here to Olympia in April and May was that in Santo Tomas, the sister city relationship is starting to be passed on to the second generation. So the children of original members of the sister city group in Santo Tomas are now coming up as leaders in that same organization, which is really a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Char, I want to connect with your things. The delegation that you went to Iran with in 2006 was organized by the national level of the Fellowship of Reconciliation, and it occurs to me in the context of this program's theme that the very origins of the organization, the Fellowship of Reconciliation, go back to this kind of thinking in 1914 in Europe, when religious leaders in various parts of Europe could tell that a war was getting ready to start. And so these religious leaders had a conference in Europe to figure out what could we as religious leaders from various countries of Europe do to prevent this war from breaking out. And as that conference was ending, the war actually started. And two of the participants who were saying goodbye at the railroad station realized that their respective governments were going to war. It was a British Quaker and a German Lutheran. And they realized that although their governments were going to be going to war, they themselves would continue to be literally a fellowship of reconciliation, that they would not let their governments define them as enemies, people to people. And so that was the origin of the sense of fellowship of reconciliation. So the British guy went home, got some friends together and created this organization. Then a year later, in 1915, he visited the U.S. and started the U.S. branch. And now we're in dozens of other countries around the world, and then we have an international FOR office in Europe that keeps everybody connected. So it occurs to me is that people-to-people connection, regardless of what the governments think, but it's that face-to-face relationship. So you were in the second delegation that the FOR had sent to Iran, and there have been many more since, a total now of 140 people. Is there anything else that you want to tell us about that Iran program?
I think that each delegation has built on the work of the previous one. And the first FOR delegation to Iran, the women were all wearing black because that's what we were told women in Iran wore. And our experience was that maybe 50% or so were head to toe in black. The rest were in colorful headscarves, tunics of various shades. So So our delegation, the second one, was given the opportunity to meet very unexpectedly with one of the vice presidents of Iran. And that in turn led to further high-level meetings between top-level Iranian officials and subsequent FOR delegations. And during this time period, the president of Iran came to the UN to give a speech, and while he was in the United States, met with clergy of several different faiths. And I tend to believe that the FOR delegations had a role in fostering that.
Yeah, you told me that when you met with one of the vice presidents, that it wasn't, as you had referred to it, as just a meet and greet thing. It wasn't like the ritual handshaking and then move on. It was a substantive conversation.
Right. We were expecting like a 5-minute grip and grin session. We sat and talked with him for 2 hours, and he was very interested in our ideas for people-to-people exchanges between Iranians and Americans.
Mm-hmm. And this is not the kind of thing that you read about in the mainstream press.
No.
So, thanks for sharing that. Let's go back through the list again and look at some more of the current activities. You mentioned the exchanges. Can you tell us how the exchanges work? You've got 5 different kinds of exchanges.
5 kinds. There are humanitarian exchanges. There have been recently exchanges to Cuba, and for about the last 7 years there have been exchanges to Novgorod in the former Soviet Union, which was a teaching exchange where people went and worked in the schools as well as spent time with individuals in their homes. That's one kind, humanitarian. Then there are special interests, people of a special interest. Recently there was one visiting gardens in England and touring under that theme. Another one around golf. There are festivals, which are gatherings, large groups of folks that go to a special area during a festival time. One recently went to Albuquerque or a couple of years ago for the Balloon Festival. And then there are people-to-people experiences while they're there. There are discovery, because a lot of new clubs are being started in third world countries, former Soviet Union countries, and in the Middle East. And so this will be a group of people that someone has made a connection with someone in the community, told them a bit about Friendship Force, and then the discovery group has gone and helped them put together the rudiments of beginning a club and are supportive of them. We have a fund called the Legacy Fund, which helps fund those. And probably the most popular, and certainly the traditional from the very beginning, were the home-hosted exchanges. And this is where a club indicates, once a year, you're asked to indicate areas of the world your club would be interested in visiting. And the headquarters in Atlanta match clubs, visiting incoming clubs and outgoing clubs, depending on what your group wants to do. And then you spend 1 week with that club in their town. In some countries you have 2 exchanges. When the Australians come, they have 3 because they come a long way and they stay a long time. 3 different cities. When the Egyptians came last year, they had been to San Diego, to Salem, Oregon, and then to our city. So they'd had 3 weeks spending time in the community with families and touring. Mm-hmm. And it isn't just, the tours or the exchanges don't just focus on local tourist events, but we visit artists, we go to schools, try to be in the culture, not just as tourists. People are encouraged to stay longer or come earlier if they want to expand on that. Next year, we, as I say, will welcome Azerbaijan from the former Soviet Union. That will be in July of next year, and our club will be going to Osaka, Japan. And in October of this year, we also have domestic exchanges. Our club will be going to Oklahoma, who was here 2 years ago, because that's also one of the benefits. You often get to visit folks who have been your guests in their home.
And you have, this doesn't need to be limited to people who are well-to-do and can afford traveling. You
tends
told me
not to be.
So it's something accessible for people of modest means.
Right, and families are encouraged when families can work it into their schedule. We have 2 or 3 young families in our club right now, and of course are always encouraging young people to be a part of it. And you may travel, I just want to say this again, with any club, any American Friendship Force club, by getting on the internet and pulling up the friendshipforce.org and seeing where a club might be going that you might be interested in participating. You can join that club.
And then you mentioned a few minutes ago September 21?
Yes. I can give you a phone number that people
Yeah.
can call for details. We also are listed on the calendar here on Channel 3 with dates and times of events. September 21st, we will have the woman come and speak about her experience as part of the Greenbelt Project in Kenya, and that will be from 3 to 5 at Vista Village on Carpenter Road, which is
Okay.
near the fairgrounds
Yeah.
in Lacey.
Okay. That's great.
And that's open to anyone. Anyone's
yeah,
welcome to come.
Yeah, and all your meetings are open to everybody, and everybody's welcome.
Absolutely.
New people welcome
Yes.
all the time.
Right.
Yeah. John, what else can you tell us about current activities, recent and current activities with the Olympia Rafa Sister City Project?
Well, we're always trying to think of ways to connect. Of course, I was able to enter Gaza, but here at home, raising awareness, getting people's attention and educating them is key. And the big project we're working on now is a mural project, which I think was highlighted in one of your shows
It was
recently.
in our March program. We had folks from the Rachel Corrie Foundation talking about the mural project. That was our March TV program.
Right, and it's again, it's that collaborative sense of ORCP, Olympia Rafa Sister City Project, is working on that with Rachel Corrie Foundation, and it's just going to be fabulous. They're working like mad to make all the details happen, and it's going to be wonderful. There's a large wall there on the Brotherhood, temple building, right there, Labor Temple building,
Brotherhood
right,
Tavern, right on Capitol Way on the side facing north.
right on facing the 5th Street,
Facing
or pardon me, State, coming
State.
down.
Yeah.
And I've seen some of the designs, and it's going to be really beautiful. And there's elements that people in the community can work on and be a part of creatively. So.
Right, and all the contact information we'll be putting in the credits at the end of the program.
Absolutely.
And they can contact either through the Olympia Rafa Sister City Project or the Rachel Corrie Foundation for Peace and Justice, and either one can use the same phone number. We'll list that at the end. We're running a bit tight on time, but I want people to know something about what you did on the trip that you took to that area in early 2008.
That I took to the area?
Yeah.
Oh,
you were there and did a whole bunch of stuff. And
yeah.
wore a lot of hats.
I did, and of course I was there to visit the good folks in Rafa, and the core group there that were great friends of Rachel and loved her very dearly, and are holding up their end of the Rafa Sister City Project. And also, before I left, I arranged to represent the Sister Cities International, which is that umbrella group for all sister cities in the U.S. And they have a new project called the Islamic Partnership Initiative, which is, as it sounds, trying to get more American cities involved in Islamic cities around the globe. So they did a tour of Middle East, and I said, well, let me be your man in Gaza because you're not heading there, and I might get in. And I did, and so I had the fortune to sit down and talk with all of the 5 governorates of the Gaza Strip, and had great meetings. It reminded me of what you were talking about, Char. Very interested in having an American there at this really hard time for them, and gave me plenty of time to talk, and were very, very interested in partnering with American cities, very interested in the Islamic Partnership Initiative, and really wanted to see that happen.
Okay, great, thanks. I know you did a whole lot more than that, but I want to be able to move on because we've got so much, everybody's doing so much. But I want to find out some about what recent things. You mentioned the 9th delegation from Santo Tomas was here in the spring.
Yes.
And they got here in time for the Procession of the Species,
Yes.
which is a big deal.
Hugely famous. And actually, I should mention that just in the last 2 years, there's been the first sort of Procession of the Species in Santo Tomas, which it's been such a highlight for so many delegates that have come here that we can't help but think that influenced the
because they come
story.
here commonly right at that time,
Yeah.
so they can catch. I think this time that was their their first big public event was
Yeah.
come and join the Santo Tomas delegation at Procession of Species, and the word went out as to what location they'd be at so people could meet them.
Yes.
What a cool thing.
It's really fun. And briefly, I'll just say a lot has changed in Nicaragua and in the United States since this relationship was initiated in the late 80s. And the United States is no longer financing a war against the people of Nicaragua, although there are still many decisions that are made here in the United States that actively impoverish people in Nicaragua and make daily living conditions very difficult. And the Olympia community has been so amazingly supportive of this sister relationship and of the projects that people in Santo Tomas are so passionately working on for years. So the Olympia community has supported the construction of a women's sewing cooperative in the late 80s in Santo Tomas. Also the building of a second story onto a school in Santo Tomas so kids who work during the day could study at night, their public school. Olympia has financed the total remodeling of a beautiful neighborhood community preschool project that serves about 50 kids. And it's just got this gorgeous playground and beautiful murals, and people from Olympia have worked on painting those murals. And there's been a lot of construction projects, some of the ones that I've mentioned that Olympia has supported over the years, as well as we have maintained ongoing commitments to support stipends for several people who are just doing invaluable community organizing work in Santo Tomas. And they'd be doing that work, they've been doing that work since before Olympia became involved, but the support that Olympia offers makes it possible for them to reach many more people. So Olympia has supported the coordinator positions for a children's free lunch kitchen that offers a hot meal to about 200 kids every day. Olympia supported the coordinator of a public library project, and also many developments that have happened on a farm project in Santo Tomas. All of those stipends have been supported by the community of Olympia, and it's been an incredible show of support that's having major impacts in Santo Tomas. We also will be having a delegation go to Santo Tomas from this community at some point in the next 18 months.
And people can contact you for information about that.
Yes.
And I know that I remember years ago, a lot of us contributed to help somebody get through medical school, a young woman who was from the community that wanted to serve the community. There's that. Tell us just briefly about the relationship with Lincoln School and the Ruben Dario School?
For about 7 years, there's been a sister school relationship between these two schools, and teachers and principals from Lincoln and from Ruben Dario have spent time in each other's communities and in each other's schools and learning from methodologies. The students in both schools exchanged letters and artwork back and forth, and actually a Lincoln student just this spring really wrote this beautiful poem about peace and put it to music and raised about $300 in donations from this 8-year-old girl writing a song about peace and wanting that $300 to go to purchase donations for supplies that could be used at Ruben Dario School. It's a very rich relationship.
I want to be sure that the people watching the show know that at the end of the program they'll be able to see all the credits that list all these things. And if they don't get a chance to write them down at that point, they can contact the Olympia Fellowship of Reconciliation, either phone us or visit our website, and they can, or email us, and we can provide the information. Because all these rich activities and coming events and things, people will want to connect. You've got a coming event after, you're going to
Egypt and Jordan.
In August.
In August, with a group of Evergreen students and Olympia community members. And this is the first group I've taken where the focus is on the arts. And each participant is going to produce a piece of art at the end of the trip, either photography, art, or writing, and on the theme of their choice related to our activities in Egypt and Jordan. And we'll have an opening and initial presentation at September 4th at 5 p.m. at the Evergreen State College Library. And then the artwork will be on display for the month of September in the Evergreen Library.
So, and then that will appear in the Olympia FOR newsletter for August and September, and it'll appear on our website. So another resource to connect on that. we're running pretty tight on time. I wonder if you could highlight any additional insights from your experiences or implications for the world around us or people. Anything else that sort of comes to mind as a kind of a closing?
Well, I'm really struck by the positive energy that our programs and these opportunities create for people. I think it's a very hopeful activity to be involved in, especially in a time when we're bombarded with so many negative messages in the media. I think that this is a really important way where instead of having our worldview constructed secondhand through the media, people can experience it firsthand and construct their own worldviews.
And it's not complex, these great groups are here so people can plug in, no matter what it is, and do a little bit or as much as they want. We make it easy for you to join up and be a part.
It's hard to explain the wonderful connection that you feel when you've been in, someone has welcomed you into their home who didn't know you the day before, and how connected you feel when you leave, as well as when you have had them in your home. It's a wonderful experience, and truly friendships endure.
Mm-hmm.
When people from this area travel to Santo Tomas, it's common to be walking through the streets and have children run up to you and say, "Olympia?" And there's just this real depth of relationship that is deeply satisfying and deeply challenging. And I would really invite people to learn more about and become involved in any opportunity for exchange.
Yeah, great. Well, I hope people will be able to connect with the efforts of you folks and start their own if they're interested in some other part of the world, or
Absolutely.
Take off. But what great role models we produce out of this community that can go any place in the world and do all kinds of wonderful things.
Makes you proud to be part of such a community.
This is what makes Olympia good. Part of what's good about it. The United States Constitution begins with the words "We the people," and it affirms that it's the people who are in charge of the government, not the other way around. And we create governments to serve us and not the other way around. And what you folks are doing is really we the people kind of things. And this is what it needs to be about. We have 4 guests who've been actively making peace around the world, and their hearts are open to making genuine friendships with people from other countries, and generous in giving their time and their efforts and their resources to connect with real humanity, real compassion, and solidarity. Each of us at the local level can connect with these groups or others, whether we want to travel to other nations or host people here or be supportive through financial contributions or other kinds of organizing efforts to support their work. And it's all one world. We really need to help people connect. I want to thank Joann Mitchell Young and John Harvey and Anna Shelton and Char Simons. I want to thank the folks who've been watching. We encourage you to look through the credits that we'll be posting at the end of the program for connecting with these folks. And if you can't write down what you want to connect with, contact the Olympia Fellowship of Reconciliation at 360-491-9093, or visit our website, www.olyfor.org. We're all one human family. We all share one planet. We can make the world a better place, but we all have to do our part. And the world needs what you have to offer. Thanks.